meet yourself where you're at. Don't try to change it. Like, you're not going to get stuck in the emotion, because emotion is energy in motion. So it's not going to get stuck. You just have to, meet it and validate it and stay with it and give it space, and it's going to go.
Today on Mirror Talk Soulful Conversations, we are joined by a woman whose life journey is both testament and a teacher. She is a love coach, relationship mentor, and the host of Heal You, Heal Your Relationship podcast. With over 15 years of experience, she has transformed her own wounds from loss and anxious attachment to heartbreak and healing into a powerful mission, helping others create emotionally healthy, lasting love. Welcome to the show, Sasha. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me for a wonderful, soulful conversation. I'm looking so much forward to learning from you, especially from your experiences, overcoming this anxious attachment, healing yourself, and everything that we have to learn and do in order to become more of ourselves, to become a much more healthier version of ourselves. But before we go into your story and also into what you do and what we're going to learn and all the 1,000 questions I have in my head right now popping, I would like us to take a little bit of break and learn more about you through a game of wild cards. So we have 3 levels. We have the first level with the icebreakers. And right now I'm shuffling through the cards and I'm going to pick a card randomly. And I'm excited to know what I'll ask you from this card.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I've asked this before. The question is, what is the last compliment you gave someone?
Probably my son, because I compliment my sons a lot. So it must have been earlier this evening where I said, your hair looks really nice, to my son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because he's starting to grow it back in.
That must have made him so happy, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's so nice for mom to compliment her sons, because that is like the first experience they have with a female relationship. I think that's really important for them to know that.
Yeah. If I might digress a little bit, I know I didn't plan to ask this, but I know you have experience with attachment, and you just mentioned something that is triggering a question in my head right now about moms giving their sons compliments. So I mean, the absence of that, would that lead to a son, for example, always craving for validation from women, when they grow up?
I don't think so. I think it's the opposite. I think the little boys that never got validation as children, or little boys and girls both that didn't get validation as children, are the ones that crave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're the ones who never got it. And so they're always like seeking to be loved. But I think if they got it, there's no need for them to
seek for it.
Always need it.
Yeah.
Because it's creating like secure attachment in childhood, which will lead to secure attachment in adulthood. But it's when we build the avoidance and the anxious attachment, the disorganized attachment styles in childhood, it doesn't move. Like, we grow our bodies, but we keep the same attachment style. And then we go and meet people and we start to use the same style until we have to, of course, look at it and do the unlearning, which is so much harder than doing the learning.
The learn itself. That's true.
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah, thanks so much for answering that. I like that. Are you ready for the confessions question?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. It says, what are you currently addicted to? Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I think what's coming up for me is something I've sort of moved through over the last month. So I'm not currently addicted to it, but I was addicted to it. I felt that for the last couple of years, I was addicted to listening to other people's meditations. Like, I would always find an online meditation, or I did a lot of Joe Dispenza meditations with like quantum physics, and because I'd gone to one of his retreats in Switzerland about a year and a half ago. And so I kept doing those types of meditations. And I felt like I was addicted to just tuning in to other people. And it was becoming a bit of a problem because I wasn't tuning into myself. And so as someone who has a background in meditation, I've been doing it for 15 years. I've gone in and out of, getting into people's methods. And so I'd become really addicted to that for a couple of years. And it was time to stop. And it was hard because then I had to sit with myself and I had to be silent. And I had to kind of tune into my energy and, what was needed and my intuition. And that was challenging to break, because I know it's not maybe the answer you're looking for, but it was challenging to break, right? Because I got so used to like other people leading me. I think they call that transcendental meditation, when other people lead you, that I was so disconnected from what I needed to listen to in myself, my inner.
Yeah, And that must have been yeah, like you said, a big challenge basically, because you're like, okay, what do I do right now? I need someone to guide me, but then yeah,
Yeah,
breaking
like
out of
I
that.
had to become my own guide. And so I broke
Yeah.
that about a month ago, and I haven't gone back to it yet. And I do get tempted, like, oh, let me just listen to, like, because I do meditate every day. But I just say, no, just close your eyes and sit with yourself, put the timer on, do the breathing, just tune into your energy, ask some questions that are coming up in your mind, to your intuition, to yourself, to
Mm.
your, spiritual realm that you're in right now, and get the answers from yourself. Like, sometimes we're always looking for answers from the outside, but we
Mm.
don't even give ourselves the opportunity to check in with the answers that come naturally from the inside if we take a moment to pause.
Take a moment to pause and reflect. I like that. It's speaking to me because I learned that a lot in the course of this podcast, like, taking time to pause, flex on life, and yeah, that's
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so important, right? Because life is so busy and racing and running all the time. There's so many things going on that you're constantly plugging in. Like, you go for a walk, you're plugging into music or an
Mm.
audio book or a podcast, right? Which is great. Like, I mean, it's great to have those times too. But
Mm.
once in a while, it's also good to just go quietly on your own and not plug into anything, be with nature and connect to what you're feeling and thinking. Because if you don't do that for yourself, no one's really going to do that for you. You have to do
True. Yeah. Plug
that.
into yourself. Yes.
Mhm.
Are you ready for the last question? Wild card
Yes.
question.
Okay.
The question is, oh, okay. What are the toughest demons you're fighting?
It's myself. I think that, like, and I'll just, take my viewpoint, and you could see, your listeners will decide what they think. You'll decide what you think. But I think the toughest demons that I have fought have been my own shadows. So
Oh.
I'm quite passionate about something called shadow work as well. But
Mm.
I remember when I was starting off my journey as, like, before I even got into my journey as a love and relationship coach, I was going through a period where I was waking up with really bad dreams. Like, I felt like there was like shadows around me all the time. Like, it felt like demons. It felt like something eerie and weird and bad spirits and juju and whatever you want to call it. It was just odd. Like, I just felt it in my energy. And at the same time, I knew that there was nothing, there was no energy I was attached that I was taking in. But it was
Mm.
actually my own fears at that time that were feeling like the demons and the shadows that were showing up and waking me up every night in my dreams, making me feel
Mm.
scared and feeling dark and hovering. And I've come to realize through my self work that those demons were everything I was fighting. Like, the fears that I was having, to the fear of dying. I was going through a really bad fear of dying at that moment, a fear of loss, a fear of something bad happening. Like, there were all signs to my anxious attachment that were being elevated in that moment. And they were coming up as like these shadows that would just linger above me. And they did feel like demons because they were ruining my whole life. Number one, I couldn't sleep. I was very reactive and irritable to my family because I couldn't sleep, and because, I was facing this fear that I was going to die, something bad was going to happen to me, and that my kids would be left without a mother, and my husband would move on without me. And, there was a lot of, like, just constant fear. And I came to realize that those were never like energetic demons or anything like that. They were my shadows, and it was saying, do your shadow work, face your fears, look at your fears, and stop running from them, and
Mm.
address what needs to be healed here. Because if you don't, we're going to continue to wake you up every night, and we're going to continue to feel really heavy and dark for you. So I
Yeah.
think I was running from that. Those were my demons, myself.
Thanks so much for that honest answer, running from
Yeah.
yourself. Well, I mean, that's over right now. I mean, you've done the work, you've done the shadow work, and now you're no
Yeah,
longer running
now I
from
help other
yourself.
people do shadow work. Not to say that I don't get triggered, but I can identify it so much faster, and I
Mm.
don't get swallowed into that type of, shadow anymore. I can identify if I'm projecting, or if, like, I'm feeling like a fear is coming up that I need to address, and I can work through it within a couple hours versus months of not knowing how to get through it.
So I like us to, continue with that already, like talking about what you've experienced, like, the anxious attachment, and also a lot of the heartbreaks that you've experienced in the past. So I would like us to start with your heart, basically. Like, what does love mean to you now after all you've lived through? I mean, if you could reflect back and look into it, with the word love right now, what does it mean to you right now?
Now it means being true to myself. Before, it had a lot of meanings, and society programs us for love to mean a lot of different things. And the word is very profoundly used as well. Like we're constantly throwing it out there, right? So like,
Yeah.
I feel like even now, like just saying I love you to my kids is very generic and it needs to have some substance behind it. But it means being true to yourself. That's what it means to me now. Like, not swallowing your needs because you're afraid to rock the boat a little bit or disturb something, or your needs are not important so that you can make somebody else happy, right? Like really honoring your needs, your true self. And if something doesn't feel right, walking away from it. And if something feels like it's a lot for you, being willing to accept that that's a lot and not fight it within yourself, right? So if something feels heavy for you and you're having a hard time, or there's, an emotion coming up that you're scared about something or you're worried about something, instead of pushing it away and, being like, it'll be okay, it's fine, being able to actually accept where you're at is honoring what truly is coming up for you. So much so that we push things away and we are unable to, we think we're okay because we push them away, we keep them at a distance. But then that's really pulling away from our true self. So to love ourselves and to feel in love with ourselves is to say, hey, I'm having a hard time today, and that's okay. I'm allowed to have a hard time. Or I am scared about this, and that's okay. Like there's been so much going on in the world recently, right? And like maybe you had a flight booked somewhere and all the flights got canceled. Like that's our region. And you're allowed to be sad about that. You're allowed, summer holidays, you had something planned. You're allowed to be nervous. You're allowed to be upset. But if you keep dismissing yourself, you take away from loving yourself.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, just being at peace with yourself, basically, and being at peace with everything around you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. I mean, I appreciate that because, sometimes I was asking that question because sometimes when we've lived through a lot of things, when we've experienced a lot of things in our past, love could have a different meaning to us, than it's actually supposed to mean. Sometimes it could be filled with some conditions. For example, like, I cannot love you because of this and this and this, or because you are triggering some part of me, and because of we don't even get to love ourselves like we are supposed to anymore because of what we've lived through, because of maybe heartbreaks or disappointment of the past. But like from what you are saying and what I've learned from you right now, I mean, once we're able to do that work, we should be able to embrace who we are, what we're going through, acknowledge it, and
like let's say you're going through the hardest heartbreak right now and you're really struggling with it. So many clients that I've had the pleasure to work with, what they consistently come up with when they're going through heartbreak is that they don't understand how they could be so upset over somebody they maybe didn't know that long. Maybe they knew them a couple months or like less than a year, like even just a couple years of their whole life. And they question why they're so upset. And that is what causes them suffering, is questioning why they're so upset. You're upset because you're upset. That meant something to you. You're disappointed. You're heartbroken. It hurts. You're sad. So why are you questioning what is truly coming up for you, right? Why not give yourself some compassion and reverence and space to just be upset and just to be sad? A lot of people think we're going to get stuck there, but we don't get stuck there. When we allow it, it moves. When we resist it, it persists, right?
Persists, yes, that's true. That's the irony of life. When you allow it, it moves.
And when you talk about like conditions, like what came up for me was like conditional love, right? That in childhood, a lot of love is conditional for many people, that if you act like this, or you are the good boy or the good girl, or you listen to mom, or you don't act up, or you don't cry about stuff, then you get praise and love, you get good grades, you do great in school, you're like, you listen, you're quiet at the dinner table, all of that, then you're praised. And you're seen to be like, the good kid, and you're shown more affection and more consideration and more love from your parents, right? And your caregivers. And so we grow up believing that like that is what's celebrated, and anything beyond that is ugly and not celebrated, right?
Yes.
So it's like, if I ever cried as a child and it was dismissed, then I'm going to believe that if I cry as an adult in a relationship or even any time, that it's ugly and nobody wants to be around it. Why would anybody want to love somebody who's so needy and crying all the time and so emotional, so sensitive? The labels that. And so we do get conditioned into conditional love as well. And then we bring it into our relationships and we make, we sort of judge ourselves when we're not showing up in a way that we think is going to give us love, or we show up in a way that's not connected to our true self because we believe it's going to give us the love that we please more, we're more available for our partners, we say yes when we really want to say no, we might even lose parts of ourselves through that process because we're so afraid that, if I don't please this person, they won't love me and then they're going to leave me. And that's reiterating your trigger from childhood.
True. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm speaking with you also, is that we can let go of these triggers and heal ourselves. And talking about healing, when preparing for this conversation, I got to know that your healing journey began when your son turned 7.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to know, like, what was it like to confront those buried wounds, and how did motherhood awaken the courage to face them?
Oh, that's a good question. So it actually began when I turned 7, by the way, even way back when. So I lost my father when I was 7 years old overnight. And yeah, it was like, and it's related to my son turning 7. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
And so I lost him when I was 7 overnight, no preparation, just overnight, had an asthma attack and never got through it. And in the morning he was gone. And so that I knew it felt big. It was obviously a big trauma. It's a huge thing. But I think that we were also told in our kind of religious community at the time that you shouldn't cry for the ones that leave because it holds their soul back. And, we were kind of told to shut down our emotions around it. And so as a kid, it's a big thing, but then everyone else around you is just trying to be like, be strong and, get through it. And you don't get to process it. So you just keep going. And then it happens almost 35 years later. My son turned 7. And for some reason, and I know that this is a thing now that I've been through it and I've studied it. So when my son turned 7, it re-triggered my loss of my father. And that is usually a thing. If your child turns an age that you were when you experienced your greatest trauma, be it small t or big T, it will trigger an awakening. Like life will feel very hard at that time. And things will come up out of nowhere that you had no idea. And you thought you had dealt with. So when that came up, I was so dismissive to it. Because I was like, okay, I get the link. I see he turned 7. I see that I was 7 when dad died, but I'm like, I got through it. Like, it's been 35 years, or maybe 30 years. It's been 30 years and I'm fine. Like, I don't need to address that again. And I just dismissed it. And it wasn't until, again, I kept having these fears, like the fear. So what followed that was like those dreams that I was going to die. My dad died. He left us. And I kept dreaming that I was going to die and leave the world. And I would have awful dreams. Like, they were like, dreams of me being on like a highway and my car like just going into the water, like just crazy. It was insane. The things that would come into my mind. And I would realize that it was like those dreams were sort of trying to awaken that this is really important and you actually do need to do this healing. You can't keep running from it. And it wasn't my fault that I ran from it at 7 years old. It was the conditioning, the environment, the knowledge that those people had at that time. The therapy wasn't even a thing when I was 7 years old. I mean, it probably was, but like only for like really crazy people or whatever the case. And I don't mean to say it that way, but you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't really like very open, right? And so my mother would never have sent me to therapy to deal with that. She was just like, okay, we just deal with it. Bad things happen, deal with it. And, we were all struggling. And so when he, those kind of shadows kept coming up for me in those dreams, it was that I had to heal my inner child. And that's where it all began. When he turned 7, I realized that I had to go back to my 7-year-old version. And I actually had to reparent and heal and address the loss on a like nervous system level, right? Because I would come to see that my nervous system had been dysregulated since I was 7 years old. I never got back to regulation. So I was chronically always anxious. Like, I remember after he passed, my mom would go to work. And I would sit at the window and I would wait for her to come home. She'd come home about 8 at night. She worked at the mall. And I would just get really like nervous. And I would just sit there and, start to overthink and worry. And the worrying kind of helped me control what I couldn't control, which was when she was going to drive into the driveway and come home. And so that's when my anxiety part was born. And that anxiety part then I think it played a role in my whole life, to be honest. I was quite negative, an overthinker. I always thought of the bad before I thought of the good. Like, how people can kind of like always be positive and think of the good. Yeah. I was never that person. I am now, but I wasn't that person. Right? Yeah. I married a person like that who was very always able to put the good and positive and keep it going. But I was the one who always thought of the bad before the good. And I think it was born from that anxious part of me that developed after the loss of my dad. And that had already been a part of my story, but got re-triggered at an excessive level. Like, it became obsessive, right? With my dreams and my thoughts and everything I was going through. So I had to go deeper. And I started reading a lot of books on the inner child. I knew it was my inner child, so I started looking for courses, and I found an incredible healer that I worked with who helped me heal my inner child. And then I went on to certify to be an inner child healing coach with her. And, it just kept coming through that. And I learned about nervous system and somatics. So I feel like my whole journey through healing has been very parallel with my personal experience. As I've been going through something, I've also been healing it, and then I've also been learning it, and then, eventually teaching it.
Teaching it, yeah. I love that process, That's something that I'm learning from life also. Like, we sometimes life makes us go through things so that we can learn from it and use that knowledge to help other people out there on their own journey towards healing. And I'm so happy that you went through this part, like not allowing the anxious attachment to consume you, but when you got that, when you got that trigger when you're almost 7 to go on that path of healing, addressing it and working on it. That's why I like as a follow-up question, I'd like to know, like, can you enlighten me on what it means to heal your inner child? Like, what do I have to do to meet my inner child with passion? With compassion or passion? Yeah.
Yeah.
Heal it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's simpler than you think. Of course, like on a deeper level, when I work with people, we do go back to core memories that are stored in the subconscious mind. We meet them, but what do we do when we meet them is we reparent. So you become the parent that your inner child didn't have, and that the younger you didn't have in that moment, right? So it involves, especially when we look at anxious attachment, it involves a lot of reassuring yourself, and a lot of validation towards your emotions. So the more that you can validate your emotions as an adult, that heals your inner child, no matter what. Like, you don't even ever have to remember anything from your childhood. You don't necessarily have to run back there, but if you can get good as an adult at validating your emotions and stop waiting for your partner or somebody from the outside to validate your emotions. So acknowledge when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling hurt, if you're feeling jealous, if you're angry, if you're rageful, if you're feeling like you're not enough, or you're feeling discouraged or anxious, right? To be able to name and have the emotional literacy to name that first. And as you name it, you then validate your inner child. Because can you imagine you going through something hard as a child and somebody coming and sitting with you that was an adult, was someone that was, your safe space, and saying, hey, you know what, this is really hard right now. And I get that. And I know this is making you feel angry, and you're allowed to feel that. And you don't have to change it. I did that with my kid just like recently, earlier, where he wanted to, what did he want? Oh, he's convinced that we're taking him to a movie tomorrow, but it's actually Saturday. And that's a huge meltdown, right? Like, it's like, I thought it was tomorrow. It's a big thing. And so I'm angry. You lied to me. And I said, okay. I said, I get that you feel that way. Like, I could have fought him. I could have been like, no, I didn't lie to you, because technically it was Saturday and you just misheard me. Like, that could have invalidated him in that moment. He's a kid. So I said, I get that you're angry. You really wanted to go to the movie tomorrow. And I get you're excited to go to the movie. It's exciting to go to the movie. And then I said, it's okay. You can be angry about it. You can be angry. And he ran to his room, and I heard him, like, he takes pillows and he throws them on the floor. And I heard him throwing the pillows. And I heard him pushing the wall and going, oh, and grunting. So he was just processing his emotion. And I didn't tell him it was wrong, and I didn't take it away from him. And I just validated him. And then he came out of the room, and I said, can we have a hug? Are you okay? And he said, yeah, we can have a hug. And then we hugged, and then it was done.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Well, can you imagine, like, someone being there for you when you had a hard moment, and not necessarily you going to your room and being alone in that moment and not knowing how to get through it? So that is kind of you becoming that person for a younger version of you. Because in everyday life, it is not your adult self that's getting triggered. It's your inner child that's getting triggered, right? It's your inner child that is feeling like salt was just poured on an already open wound from the past. Like, your heartbreak, even that you might be going through, or if a relationship is tough, is triggering your inner child. So you need to be very soft and talk to yourself like you talk.
Yes. Be soft. Talk to yourself like you talk to your inner child, your own child. Yeah. Your inner child.
Yes. We don't have to always be tough and strong. Like, those are great qualities too. We don't always have to man up. Like, those are great qualities in the time. But sometimes it can just be admitting that this has been a tough few weeks for me. And I am feeling hurt about this. So I've just been feeling really angry, and I can't really explain why, but I feel the emotion. I've been feeling really anxious, and just meet yourself where you're at. Don't try to change it. Like, you're not going to get stuck in the emotion, because emotion is energy in motion. So it's not going to get stuck. You just have to meet it and validate it and stay with it and give it space, and it's going to go.
Yes.
Like, have you ever felt angry the whole day?
Of course. I mean, at some point, the
At
anger
some
goes
point you
away,
do. Like,
basically.
it's not like you feel angry from like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single moment of the day.
I thought about that a bit, and I was like, no, it's not possible. Actually, I took that back.
Like, an emotion will always go, but if you keep resisting it and invalidating it and gaslighting yourself, and making you feel like I'm fine, I should be over that, you're going to suffer greatly, and your inner child needs you to show up for that. That's probably one of the biggest tools that you can do without even going to anybody's program, without even digging deeper with it, just from this podcast. That is one thing that you can do today to start to meet your inner child and do the reparenting that she deserves or he deserves.
There's something you said earlier. I'd like us to go back to it a little bit, if that's okay. And you talked about you being the negative person, or always looking at the negative before the positive. To me, it also sounds like, I love that. I love that fact of being, vulnerable, admitting it that, okay, I'm the one sabotaging this at the moment, for example, because of my way of thinking. Comes from the past experience and before the healing of the inner child. My question actually is like, how do one come to recognize that, okay, these are my patterns? And what advice would you give to someone out there who is still in denial or blame, basically? Like, okay, so two questions in one. Like, how do I know my patterns? Like, okay, I am actually a negative person. And how do I then, what advice would you give to someone like that who is in that kind of space that is still in denial and say, no, this is how everyone thinks. This is how I think this is a practical way to think without, realizing that they have a pattern.
I think that people know. I think people do know on a personal level when they conversate with themselves, whether they are negative or more positive. But I think it's like they just don't know what to do. It's like you can be stuck in these negative cycles and you just don't know how to get out of it, right? Like you feel like I remember that time when I began this journey. I felt so stuck. I felt like, where do I start? What do I do? Like, how do I break this habit? Like, my pattern is a pattern of reactivity. I used to yell and get angry really fast at my kids and my partner, and I could not control my reactivity. I was incredibly controlling and trying to control things and be reactive. And I had these outbursts. I didn't think before I talked. And in my mind, I thought really negatively about everything. And so I think like for somebody to recognize the patterns is to step out of the victim state. Right? Like it's really easy to get stuck in poor me mentality, or people are doing this to me, or, people are making my life hard. It's really easy to get stuck in that victim mentality. And that would come from, being conditioned on that. Maybe you grew up with a parent who was like that, or maybe just things happen to you and you've just become stuck in that cycle. Right. And on the tough love part, I would say nobody's coming to save you. I'm sorry. Nobody's coming to save you. So you can either be stuck here and continue to suffer in your life, or you can decide that you're not going to play the victim anymore and you're not going to get stuck in that victim mentality, and you're going to come out of it just by simply believing that, you know what, where can I take accountability here? Where can I reflect and see how I'm sort of doing this to myself, right? So like what's coming up for me right now is an example of when I was in the victim mentality, I would sort of isolate myself from my partner and my boys. So he would like play with them in the pool or be active with them, and they would gravitate towards him. I would just sort of feel bad for myself. Like the kids don't really want to be around me that much. They don't really love me as much as they love him. He's always the fun person. I'm always the rule and, the discipline kind of person. And I would just like kind of almost like physically move away. And I was stuck in my victim state at that moment. I was making a lot of stories mean something, and it wasn't necessarily true. And I had to decide that like I can continue to play the victim here, but is it really getting me where I want to go? Like I'm not connected to my family. I'm missing out on things. I'm feeling bad for myself and then missing out on playing catch today or swimming in the pool or doing that dive they just did. Or can I break the pattern? So I had to ask my partner for help. I had to be like, it was really hard for me. And sometimes it's okay to ask people to call you out on stuff and to help you. And I said, listen, when you notice that I'm sort of retreating and I'm going into this thing, but you still want me to be a part of things, can you just send me an olive branch? Can you just be like, hey, we'd really like you to be a part of this and pull me into the experience just until my pattern can break and I can get used to doing it on my own. Can you just help me a little bit? And he took that feedback and, wanted to help me, and he helped me. And then I was able to break free of that victimizing myself as well. So also when you're trying to break a pattern, it's okay to ask somebody to check you, right? Somebody
Yeah.
that you love. Like when I was yelling a lot, you know, my partner used to say, calm down a lot, and calm down didn't do nothing for me. It made me want to yell more because I didn't want to be told what to do. So it was more about my partner saying like, that doesn't feel good right now. And then I would like soften. Right? Because like I'm a quite empathetic person, and that wasn't my true way of being when I was reactive. But him saying I don't feel, that doesn't make me feel good right now, or I don't like the way you're talking to me. It's just softened me, and I was able
Yeah.
to sort of, you know, understand and be checked and take accountability and be able to break that pattern much more easily. So when you're breaking a pattern, it's one, understanding if you're making yourself a victim, because then you're creating your own suffering. Number two is that patterns they're passed on, right? Like they're conditioned, they're seasoned in you. So don't put all the pressure on yourself to figure it all out. If you have loved ones and they're engaging in those patterns, have an honest conversation. Like, I'm really working on this and I'm kind of need your help. Can you help me? And then figure out what it is that they could say or do in that moment that you would receive the help and not reject it.
Yeah. Yes.
So that would be a good place to start.
Yes. Don't make yourself feel like the victim, or remove yourself from that victim mindset. One other thing that stands to me afterwards is like getting the help from your loved ones, like using them as a mirror. Like, okay, you see me better than I see myself. Can you tell me how I look? If I'm not looking the right way, point it out to me and let me adjust. Something
Yeah,
like that.
and that brings us to what I wanted to make sure we highlighted was the
Yeah.
law of reflections, the law of mirrors. It's a universal law, right? And I use it a
Yeah.
lot in my personal life, and I use it a lot in my mentorships with people. And so when you believe that someone is doing something to you, they're making your life hard. Anytime the person's in a mix of your situation, like you and someone else, it could be a colleague, it could be a family member, a child, a partner. Anytime you believe that, it's just reflecting what is already present in you. Okay, so let's break it down. So if you believe that somebody is, okay, let's go on a dating front. Let's say that men are always ghosting you, or women are always ghosting you. You're always getting ghosted. You're always getting like people that don't commit. They don't show up to commit. They don't call you back. They don't follow up. I would ask you to turn the mirror to and ask yourself, where am I not committing to? Where am I not showing up for myself? Right? Where am I not putting myself a priority? And I bet you'll find answers in some area of your life. You're not putting yourself a priority. Maybe career, maybe family. Maybe you're not setting boundaries. Maybe there's a conversation you have to have with a loved one and you're putting it off and you're not putting yourself first. Because your reality will continue to mirror what already exists within. And if you keep getting mirrored the same pattern of meeting the same kind of people, you got to look at you. That's a reflection, right? That you need to check in with. So notice what language you're using outward and then turn it inward and say, where am I doing this to myself, right?
Yeah. Yes.
It could be the same thing with
so
judgment too. Like people are always judging me. I always feel like, you're judging this, like, maybe a couple, right? Always feeling judged. Why don't you turn the mirror and see where you're actually judging yourself?
True. Turn inwards and check out what you're doing to yourself that is making you attract that kind of energy to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if your reality is showing you something you don't like, please switch the mirror around and check in with you, because you can actually have control and change your reality when you do. How cool is that?
That's very cool. Yes.
Yeah.
So if I turn inwards, for example, and I notice, I have to place myself first in a very difficult situation, I say difficult, maybe difficult in terms of family, loved ones that you cannot let go of or do without, basically, something like that. How do I help myself in such a situation? I mean, do you have any advice on that? Like, for example, if I'm in a difficult situation with my siblings, for example, and I love them so much, I were brought up to always stand by each other and, fight for each other, basically. How do I place myself first in such complicated situations?
Yeah. I think that when we look at siblings' energy, we treat each other based on how we've always treated each other, right? So there's different dynamics. So you've created like this nervous system energy with your siblings and your family system. Everybody's always played a certain role in the family system. One person is always the one that, saves everybody. The other person, maybe they go to advice for. The other's the fun one, the carefree one. Everybody has stated a sort of role in the family system. And the other family members get used to that being the case. And they are conditioned to it. So as you grow out of those roles, you elevate as a person, you grow your consciousness, and maybe you don't want to play the savior anymore. Maybe you don't want to play, the fun one anymore, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so you can find yourself in situations where you're still being treated that way and certain things are still being expected of you. And to prioritize yourself would be to set loving and firm boundaries, right?
Mm.
So what you will allow someone to do, they will continue to do regardless of the relationship. And what you will not allow them to do will be what will stop. And I think looking at it from an internal perspective would be what you're fearing the most is you're fearing that they're not going to love you as much, or you're fearing that they're going to
Yeah.
distance themselves. And maybe temporarily they will. But if it is
Mm.
causing you a lot of distress and it is affecting your life and you keep finding yourself in the same situation, repeating the same thing, having the same drama come your way, right? Then if you do not set a boundary, you're not prioritizing yourself. And to set a boundary is to be like, I love you, you're really important to me, and this isn't feeling good right now, and I'm not going to allow this. And it can feel harsh. And people will
Yeah.
usually be very annoyed of your boundaries in the beginning, and there will be some resistance. But, I think when you balance it with kindness and love on the other side, they'll eventually come around, and you'll have to deal with the fact that you can't make everybody happy. You can't make all your siblings happy. You just can't.
No.
It's never going to
That's
be able
true.
to. Like if you're living trying to make everyone happy, you will then make yourself unhappy.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't please anybody. You can't please everybody.
You can't. No, like, sometimes you can't get it all right. You're going to make mistakes, and, people are going to have their moments and have their feelings. You can validate them. You can say, I know this is upsetting to hear. I know that this is not what you wanted to hear. And that's hard right now. And be very kind and loving with those words. And also, I'm going to stick to what I need to stick to. Like I'm having a really hard time now with like setting boundaries with my kids. Like I always want to cave. I always want to give in because nobody gave in for me. So I want to do it for them, and I cannot do it because I will create a really nasty condition there. I have to stay strong even when it is hurting me incredibly inside. I have to stay strong. Like, like for example, my son today, can I please come watch a TV show with you? And I know that I couldn't cave in that moment. It doesn't mean I don't cave in sometimes, but I knew in that moment I could tell he was exhausted from his day. Last day of school, played sports after, he was exhausted. So he needed sleep. I could see it in his eyes. He was yawning. And if I caved in that moment, it would make it much more challenging for me. So I had to decide, like, this is a firm no for me. And I just said, I know you really want to stay up, and I know you really wish you could stay up a little bit longer. And I felt guilty. I felt a bit, icky about it. But then I was like, it's okay to feel guilty about it. It's new. It's new, and it's
new.
different for me. So I can feel guilty and still do it.
Yeah.
Guilt is just a feeling, so it's going to wave through me.
It's going to go. Like you said, emotion is energy in motion. Before you know it, it's gone.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. But it's hard. I get that it can be tough to set boundaries with the people we love. And in so many ways, it's what grows relationships. Like with my mother, I remember I had to set a lot of boundaries with her later in life because I was always it's okay, it's fine, be the good girl, don't say anything, don't speak back. And as I went on my healing journey, I started to speak back. I started to stand up for myself. I started to say when something didn't feel right. And in the beginning of setting boundaries with her, she was very, she just didn't like them. She didn't like them. She persisted. She resisted. She pushed back. It caused a little bit of suffering in the beginning. And now she respects my boundaries about the way I'm raising my kids, the way that I'm doing things, the way that I'm showing up in my life. And I like her more because of that. Now I want to be with her. I want to spend time with her because she's respecting my boundaries. Because when somebody's not, you kind of distance yourself too. You don't want to.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. I love the fact that you talked about boundaries because I would like to quickly touch on, some people that have given in already, like maybe people pleasing in the relationship, and that way they've lost their power in the relationship, in that dynamics. And now they've listened to us so far and they're like, okay, I would like to gain that power again. I would like to set some boundaries and say no when I mean no, and not just yes to these people. But the other people already have a different picture of them. Oh, Tobi or Sasha, they're easygoing, they always say yes, they always approve. How can we regain our power back in such relationships?
And so it's two fronts, right? One is, reminding yourself why it is such an important thing for you to do this, like why it's going to heal you to do this, like standing in your own inner worth. I'm worthy of this. I am important. I do matter. I am allowed to put myself first, like, really building yourself up from the inside with that narrative, that positive self-talk, and, preparing yourself for that. And the second thing is maybe being very transparent and saying, I know in the past I was easygoing and I was okay with this, but I am changing and things are different and I'm not okay with this time. And it's not a reflection of you or anything. It's just who I'm becoming. And it would mean the world to me if you would support that. And if you aren't able to support it, well, then this is what I'm going to do. Like, I remember when my mom would call and she'd be like yelling at me. And I'd be like, if you cannot stop yelling at me, I'm going to. That is a boundary. What you will do if somebody doesn't stop doing what they're doing. A lot of people think it's like a request. A request is like, please stop yelling at me. But a boundary is, I will walk out of this room if you continue yelling. I will hang up the phone. What will you do is sort of like the harsher part of a boundary. It's like a really firm stance, right?
Yeah.
But if you are not feeling like somewhat, connected and solid inside, you're going to be very wishy-washy on the outside, right? If you're not grounded in here, like I was telling you with the kids, like they'd ask me things and I'd be like, oh my gosh, do I say, I want to say yes, I want to say no. I was wishy-washy inside. I was letting my worth be reflected on whether I said yes or no, or whether I was willing to please someone. But when I was standing in my worth, it didn't feel good. I was able to stand in my boundary as strong. And people can sense that about you. They can sense if you're wishy or if you're actually genuine in what you're going to stand for. So I think it is a practice and maybe a preparation of especially if it's a particular person, being like, listen, you're going to notice that I start doing things a little different. You're going to notice that when you ask me for something, I may not say yes. You're going to notice that I'm not going to always be easygoing and available. And I'm just changing. And those are parts of me you're going to notice may shift. And that preparation can then prepare the person for when that does happen. So they're not shocked by your behavior, right? And at the same time, you don't have to do that preparation. It can also be that you can just be really kind and be like, this is not what you wanted to hear. I get that. Like I would literally repeat that. This is not what you wanted to hear. I get that. And just be a robot. Like as they keep fighting back, this is not what you wanted to hear. This is not what you're expecting. I get that. This is hard to hear. I get that. Like a lot of validation and love, I feel will soften the other person too, and they won't take it so serious or personally.
Seriously. Yeah. Just stand your ground and just keep on. Yeah. That's where you get your power back.
If you don't, like, you just don't then, and it's practice, right? It's about you do it once and then you prove to yourself you can do it again. And then you prove to yourself you can do it again. And then eventually it just becomes how you, like, I've been proving to myself I can have good boundaries with the boys for like the last year. So I'll work it on it. And this summer is going to be a big test for me because it is one of my goals for this summer to really be loving and kind, but also.
It's good for them and it's good for you too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Wow. So, I mean, for our listeners out there who are searching for love at this moment or, feeling like they've lost it, like what soul message would you whisper into their hearts right now?
I think I would just want to give them a hug and a lot of compassion and say that, wherever you're at now, I get that it's hard and I get that it's not what you expected. That it hurts and it's allowed to hurt. You're allowed to feel like a complete mess and whatever you're feeling is totally valid. And just like so many things have passed through you, you will also receive this passing. There will be a bigger message, a bigger download, a better ending, a better next thing for you. But for now, you're allowed to just feel exactly where you're at. Like you don't have to push yourself to push through it or change or get over it. The more that you can accept where you're at, the greater the greater chance that healing takes place is when you accept where you're at and you don't force yourself out of it and busy yourself and distract. Because if you end up doing that, you end up then taking that pain into the next relationship. So let yourself be here. Let yourself just meet you at a very loving, caring place. Like you're a teenage child that just realized her crush doesn't like her.
Yeah.
Be that parent for that teenage child and say, this does hurt. It's their everything in that moment. And right now, if you're going through a really hard time, a loss of a relationship, heartbreak, it's your everything. It's everything. It's consuming you. That's why you're talking about it nonstop. That's why you're telling people about it. And so be that source of validation and compassion and steadiness and give yourself as much time as you need and know that the more that you can give yourself time and accept where you're at and allow yourself to just meet yourself in this space and not push yourself into another space, the greater your chance of healing is and the stronger you will.
Yeah. allow yourself to experience that moment and get the lesson out of it.
Yes.
I love that so much. Wow, Sasha, I've learned so much from you. Thank you so much for your openness. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your embodiment of the truth that healing is possible. And I'm so happy that you're helping other people out there, even with your podcast. And, everything that you've shared so far has been rooted in love, rooted in self-awareness, and how we could also truly transform ourselves. I really appreciate learning from you today. But for people out there who would like to learn more about you, start listening to your podcast from right now and, connect with you also, what's the best way to do this? What's the best way to work with you?
Thank you so much for allowing me to share space here, my voice and my truth, and just be who I am. They can connect with me on Instagram at Sasha Quince Love Coach. And I also have another page at Heal You, Heal Your Relationship. So those two pages are where I give a lot of wonderful tips and strategies and tools. And you got my link tree there so you can see everything that I offer out there too. And for my podcast, of course, Heal You, Heal Your Relationship. It's a very open and raw format of the podcast. There's a lot of storytelling. There's a lot of examples and tons of tangible tools like we've had on this episode that you can take over.
Awesome. So I'll place a link to your Instagram in the show notes of this episode. I encourage everyone out there to start following you already on Instagram and pay attention to the link in your bio where you have your link tree and you could connect to the podcast and other platforms and get across to all the other goodies that you offer to the world. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.